Welcome to this episode of the CyberSecure Podcast. This is episode 2, and today we're going to be talking about CrowdStrike, the incident that occurred recently, causing millions of Windows machines to behave in a, well, let's definitely say problematic manner. We're going to look at this from a different perspective than many have. Our focus is going to be on what we can learn from it in order to better manage the maintenance of our systems in the future. So let's get started. There was some issues with the initial reporting of the CrowdStrike incident. Most of the issue reports in the initial headlines never referred to CrowdStrike in the headline. Instead, they referred to Windows or Microsoft. And here, for example, we see the last one that I've displayed from NBC News. What we know about the global Microsoft outage. Well, let me say one thing very clear right now. It was not a global Microsoft outage, because you could interpret that to mean all of the Microsoft systems were failing. And that's not the case. The systems in my office didn't fail. Most of your Windows computers didn't fail, because the reality is that you had to be running something other than just Windows to experience this failure. And these headlines misrepresent that. They place the focus on Microsoft or Windows when the focus should have been where, well, the subheadline in the NBC News report was focused. Notice it says that a massive outage was caused by what was supposed to be a routine update from the cybersecurity company CrowdStrike. So the first moral that we want to learn from this is don't believe headlines necessarily. But the important thing to keep in mind is we really do need to understand when security incidents occur, we have to find out the cause, the source, what caused that security incident. And by the way, I'm going to argue this was a security incident, and we'll see that argumentation as we go along. Now, here's the thing then. What is this thing called CrowdStrike? Well, CrowdStrike, you could define it generically by saying that this company is your all-in-one system security solution for many parts of the security of your systems. Here's how they describe it themselves. CrowdStrike has redefined security with the world's most advanced cloud-native platform that protects and enables the people, processes, and technologies that drive modern enterprise. You're going to see in a moment why I underlined redefined security. Then it says that CrowdStrike secures the most critical areas of risk: endpoints and cloud workloads, identity and data, to keep customers ahead of today's adversaries and stop breaches. The whole point is that it's a cloud-native platform that enables people, processes, and technologies that drive the modern enterprise. So notice when I said it's kind of trying to be your all-in-one security solution: people, processes, technologies. That kind of covers it all, doesn't it? Now, importantly, we see that we're dealing with endpoints and cloud workloads, identity, and data. If you've been through the CyberSecure certification course, then you know about identity. You know about data. You know the importance of these concepts in security. And they're dealing with your identity and your data, this company, as well as enterprise and cloud workloads. But it doesn't end there either. This solution is powered by the CrowdStrike Security Cloud, so their cloud service, and the CrowdStrike Falcon platform. Now, the cloud is simply your software and data running or being stored on someone else's computers somewhere on the internet. That's effectively the cloud. Now, when you keep that in mind, understand that what they define as a security cloud means that CrowdStrike is taking data that they're gathering from sensors all over the world about anomalies, alerts, and incidents, and they're storing those in their cloud platform so that they can analyze that using machine learning and other techniques in order to discover and alert their customers to threats, among other things. And it's based on the CrowdStrike Falcon platform. Now, Falcon is the key thing here. The Falcon platform runs partly, of course, in the cloud, but has to have something on your network and on your devices in order to track this information. And so what they do is that something that's on your network, well, it is what they call a single lightweight agent. And so this agent is really just a piece of software that runs on your computer systems, whether those be Windows clients, Windows servers, Macintosh systems, and so forth. So it's a piece of software that runs on those systems, but there's a particular way this software runs on Windows systems that is problematic and caused this problem. That is, on Windows systems, this is running in what is called kernel mode, effectively like a device driver. Now, what is kernel mode? Well, let me give you a different definition. So we have kernel mode and we have user mode in Windows, right? Think of kernel mode like God mode and user mode like human mode. Humans are limited, we're constrained. Gods are unlimited, they're unconstrained, they can do whatever they want. Stuff in kernel mode on your Windows computer can do whatever it wants, for the most part. Stuff in user mode, remember humans, stuff in user mode is limited by the operating system as to what it can access and what it can do. So when something runs in kernel mode, a simple way to think about it is it's like it's becoming part of your operating system. And it then has low-level access to hardware and information. And that is where one of the major problems was introduced here with the Falcon agent issue in the Windows system. So what this company does then is they give you agents that you can put on your computing devices. Those agents report security information back to the cloud. That data is analyzed in order to find threats and so forth. Notice that they said earlier here that the Falcon platform leverages real-time indicators of attack, threat intelligence on evolving adversary tradecraft, and enriched telemetry from across the enterprise to deliver hyper-accurate detections, automated protection and remediation, elite threat hunting, and prioritized observability of vulnerabilities, all through a single lightweight agent. The question is, what happens when the agent becomes the threat? Now, also notice that they go on to say with CrowdStrike, customers benefit from superior protection, better performance, reduced complexity, and immediate time to value. It's an interesting phrase there, better performance. You can measure performance in different ways. Performance can be measured by how quickly something gets done, or simply that it successfully gets things done on a continual basis, right? So I can improve the efficiency of a system, that's performance. I can improve the effectiveness of a system, that's performance. It gets the results I need, it's effective. It gets the results much faster, that's efficient. But really both of those fall under performance because think about it, we often say, does the application perform as I need it to? If I'm getting the output I need, regardless of how long it takes, then it does what I need it to as far as the output. Now, I might also have an imposing need of performance from the perspective of efficiency, but if I'm just looking at the output, then it is performing well if it gives me the output that I need. Then, if I look at efficiency, I say it's not performing well, even though it gives me the output I need, if it's not getting it done as fast as I need. So there's a complex relationship there, but performance is also somewhat related to this concept that we talk about in security, and you know this concept if you've been through our CyberSecure course, and that is availability. In fact, within the realm of security in computing systems, we have a concept known as the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Availability is a key concept in security. One of the major goals of security is making sure that your systems are there when you need them, from where you need them, by whom they are needed, and in the way they are needed. So quality factors like performance and security and so forth. So availability, it's there, to simplify it. So that's a key component of security. Now, let's keep that in mind, because now we're going to talk about redefined security. Remember, they said that they were redefining security. Well, let's see what I'm going to get at here. George Kurtz of CrowdStrike said CrowdStrike is actively working with customers impacted by a defect found in a single content update for Windows hosts. Now, he posted this at 5:45 a.m. on July 19th, 2024. This was just when the incident was beginning to be noticed by people, and people were being impacted by it in a significant way. The first mistake in this post is he said it's a defect found in a single content update for Windows hosts. Now, I understand that George could have assumed people would infer from this that this update for Windows hosts came from CrowdStrike, and it was a CrowdStrike update and not a Microsoft Windows operating system update, but he did not say that here. This is unclear communications, and he should have had a little more clarity. We'll see that they did attempt to resolve that in later communications. But just as a note, if you're ever involved in communicating a security issue or any kind of a problem caused in systems, make sure you're clear in your statement. Otherwise, there's resistance to future communications and all kinds of psychological problems you face down the road. It goes on to say that Mac and Linux hosts are not impacted, because this was a content update for the Windows host. It's not that Mac or Linux hosts could not be impacted by a bad update. They can be, and they have been many, many times in the past. But it's that they were not impacted by this particular update, and that's the key here. Now, notice what he goes on to say. This is not a security incident or cyber attack. That is not correct. From my point of view, and from the point of view of many experts in the security industry. I'll explain why more. He goes on to say the issue has been identified, isolated, and a fix has been deployed. Again, a fix has been deployed, he says. A fix has been made available would be a better phrase. I understand in geek speak, deployed means that you have made it available so that other people can get it and actually apply it. But for your average individual, deployed means, oh, the problem's solved. It's been deployed. It's out there. That's not at all what it means here. So a better phraseology would have been that it was isolated and a fix has been made available, or a fix is now available. Either of these would have been better. He goes on to say that they're going to continue to provide updates from the website and so forth. All right, so let's see if they stick to this positioning of this is not a security incident. How about 11:07 a.m.? This was a few hours later, the same morning on July 19th, where he says, today was not a security or cyber incident. Our customers remain fully protected. Interesting. So part of security is physical security, right? What if I was running a physical security system, and on that system, I had the Falcon agent running, and that system is now down, and therefore I'm not fully protected anymore. And I know that is not directly the fault of CrowdStrike. But I'm saying that this statement, our customers remain fully protected. You cannot say that a customer is fully protected if many of their systems may be down, and many of those systems may be critical infrastructure systems or critical security monitoring and control systems. So it would have been far better to say, our customers have not been made vulnerable directly because of this incident. In other words, you're not necessarily vulnerable just because the data here has been corrupted. Or you could have said, we have not made these systems running the agent vulnerable. Some kind of phraseology that simply makes it more realistic to the impact that you've had on the world. I wasn't caught in an airport, thankfully. I wasn't traveling. I had no banking problems that day. I did try to use a couple of websites that didn't work, but I don't know that that was an issue with the CrowdStrike incident. But I know that hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people were stranded at airports. And I know the distress that comes when anything related to travel occurs. I remember many years ago, probably over 20 years ago now, I was flying, I believe it was with Northwest. I was flying into Detroit. We were on our way down, descending into the airport, and we were so low that you could look out and see extremely tall things that were almost level with the plane. We were almost ready to touch down. And all of a sudden, that plane full throttled and started to pull up. And of course, we're all thinking, what in the world just happened? It went up, went off into the distance, and started circling back around. Once we got back up to higher altitude again, the pilot came on to inform us that the reason we had simply abandoned our descent into the airport was because there was another airplane on the runway that we were coming in on. So he saved our lives. But needless to say, between the moments of the thrust and pulling back into the air and when that announcement was made were extremely stressful moments. So yes, travel can be stressful, and that might have made it a bit more stressful than this incident, but not for all. What if you were trying to get home because there was a horrific health emergency, some other disaster you were trying to deal with? It was catastrophic for many people. It was catastrophic for healthcare scenarios, banking scenarios, manufacturing scenarios where systems were impacted by this. So let's not make light of it by just saying our customers remain fully protected. And by the way, I'm not targeting CrowdStrike here. They've been a good company. They've provided useful services to the security industry for many years, and I'm sure they will continue to. But I think we can learn some lessons in such an extreme scenario for how to deal with it. All right, so the question that we're asking here is whether or not this is a security incident, not whether or not it's an attack, whether or not it's a security incident. Well, let's look at one more thing here. Let's see how they redefined security. So here's a blog post. Now, this blog post came even later than those two tweets. And what I want you to notice is that they're sincerely apologizing directly to all of us for today's outage. All of CrowdStrike understands the gravity and impact of the situation. We quickly identified the issue and deployed a fix, allowing us to focus diligently on restoring customer systems as our highest priority. Then he goes on to say, the outage was caused by a defect found in a Falcon content update for Windows Host. First of all, they've just improved, haven't they? What they said earlier when they didn't clearly say that the update was to Falcon and not an update to Windows itself. Much better. Good job. Excellent way to say it. And then it says Mac and Linux hosts are not impacted, and this was not a cyber attack. Notice there's no language here saying this was not a security incident anymore. They've simply removed the language that said this was not a security incident and kept the language that it was not a cyber attack. And that is true. It was not a cyber attack. Now, this page was posted on July 19th at 18:39:37. So around 6:39 p.m., several hours after that second Twitter post. It was also updated again later. Why is all of this important? It's important because we have to answer the question, what is a security incident? A security incident is really any negative impact on security metrics. What are our metrics? Do we have confidentiality? Do we have integrity? Do we have availability? If we just look at those three things, answering those questions and measuring them, then clearly this was a security incident because we lost availability because of it. Here's the key thing. Security incidents can be intentional or unintentional. An intentional security incident is malicious. The attack was on purpose. Then it is a cyber attack. Then it is a security attack. But they can also be unintentional. They can be incidental, meaning the problem was not the purpose. Incidental means that we purposed one thing, but in doing it, this other thing happened, right? So there was a purpose to the action. The action was on purpose, but we did not foresee that this other thing would also occur. That's incidental. And then there's accidental. And this means that we had no purpose. We weren't really trying to do anything of significance. We had an accident. You know, if you're walking down a sidewalk and you trip and fall, that was an accident. There was no purpose that was in relation to falling whatsoever, right? It was an accident. I would suggest that the difference between them is that in my definition of incidental, you didn't do all your homework, and had you could have avoided it. You didn't analyze it as effectively as you should have, and had you could have avoided it. And again, I'm not calling out CrowdStrike on this. They've already said that themselves, that clearly they need to evaluate their issues and get to the root cause. You know, when the systems went down, the internal people had to say, what's the root cause? What's causing these systems to crash? Their root cause was, well, it's the Falcon agent. But CrowdStrike has to look at it and go to the root cause and say, how did this update get deployed out to all of our customers and end up causing this failure? That's the analysis that has to be done by CrowdStrike, a very different root cause analysis. So we have those things that are unintentional. Even if you don't fully accept the differentiation between incidental and accidental, we can certainly say that this was an unintentional security incident. Why was it a security incident? Because even the NIST definition itself, the NIST, the NIST definition of a security incident is any event that impacts confidentiality, integrity, or availability. And this is a very commonly accepted definition of a security incident. So clearly it was not accurate by the standards of many security experts to say it was not a security incident. Indeed, it was. So what are the ramifications of this and the lessons for the future? Well, first of all, we need to really do some hard thinking about fully automated updates from third parties. We use this phrase third party a lot within the tech industry. The first party of your operating system is the group that creates it. So for Windows, it's Microsoft. For Mac OS, it's Apple. For Linux, well, it's the community that develops that distribution. But that's the first party. So Microsoft, in this case, would be first party. Second party is the consumer of what the first party created. In other words, it's me and you, the Windows user. Third party is someone else who creates something that you can use in or on that operating system that Microsoft created. So CrowdStrike would be third party. Now, fourth party would be, let's say CrowdStrike doesn't create all of the code for their software, which, by the way, is extremely common in the software sales industry. And instead, they buy modules that someone else created, and they simply put those in their software to do certain things, and then they build extra code around that. That is completely common. We call these libraries, modules, and things like that in the software development world, but it's someone else created it. We may never even look at that code at all or analyze it in any way. We may not even have access to that code. Because in Windows, it might just be a DLL that we call. A DLL is a dynamic link library. It's a piece of software that has a bunch of functions inside of it that your software can call to do something. So it's kind of like if you had a genius around all the time and you didn't know how to do certain mathematical calculations, but anytime you need that genius, you just say, hey, here's the numbers I need you to use. Use these numbers, perform the calculation, give me the results. That genius, that's a DLL in Windows. It knows how to do one or more things. And software can call on it to do those things and just get the results back. Okay? So it happens all the time in Windows that people buy these compiled, encoded DLLs that they don't have the source code for, and they use them to get things done on the Windows system in their software. That would be fourth party. From the perspective of me buying that third-party software, for them, that would be third party, right? So that's them going outside of themselves to get something. But for me, that's fourth party. Now, we're not going to get into fifth and sixth and seventh, but obviously it can go on to infinity. And that's why we usually just stop at third party. First party, in this case of this incident with CrowdStrike, Microsoft. Second party, the users of Windows. Third party, CrowdStrike. So now let's consider automated updates from third parties. I would suggest you need to implement an update procedure. What that is for you, I can't answer. In the context of a large enterprise, it's one answer. And in the context of a large enterprise with highly sensitive systems and mission critical systems all over the place, it's one answer. And a large enterprise with moderately critical systems, it's a different answer. That answer is too complex to give in a few minutes of a podcast, but it's a question you need to answer. What is my update procedure going to be? Both as a second party, updating Windows itself, and for third party software, updating things like CrowdStrike and outside software. Even as a user, you yourself should think about this. Let's say you have a computer at home, whether it's a laptop or a desktop that runs Windows, or any other operating system, it really doesn't matter. How do you apply updates? If you just let updates apply automatically all the time, and you're not really backing up your data or backing up your system or anything like that, then if one of those updates crashes your system, how do you get things back up and running? Have you ever asked yourself that question? This is very important to consider even on an individual personal level. So we definitely want to be backing up our systems for one thing. Because no matter what update procedure we put in place, there are going to be times when even that procedure may fail us. And we have to deal with that reality. And then you make sure that you use what you require and not what's shiny. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by use what you require and not what's shiny is just because there is an update doesn't mean we should apply that update. Now, generally speaking, anything that's causing stability issues or adds a feature that's critical for us that would really benefit our organization or our individual use, or addresses a security vulnerability. Those kinds of things, we are probably going to give priority to them. But that's just it. We're going to give priority to them. We're analyzing them, deciding what has priority. In an organization, it is absolutely essential that we test these first before we deploy. As an individual, we may just make sure we have everything backed up. I mean, let's be real. Most of us as individuals, we do not have a computer in our home that is just there and it's exactly a mirror of our computer we use, and we test everything on this one first before we put it on ours. We don't have those kinds of configurations. And so for us, we make sure everything's backed up before we apply the updates. I personally do not do automatic updates for my Windows systems, even those that come from Microsoft. I instead go in periodically and update them. I back up my system. I apply the updates. Now, everybody's different. I obviously come from a technical background and have more capabilities to do some more advanced things on my computers, and not everybody does. So at the very least, we should at least be backing up our system using some kind of system recovery state option that's built into Windows or even third-party tools. Use what you require, not what's shiny. So I don't just go and get it because it's the latest, but instead I evaluate it and ask what kind of impact is it going to have on my system, and then apply as appropriate. These are the lessons that we can learn from this CrowdStrike incident. Now again, it impacted availability. That makes it a security incident. So what I want to do as we wrap things up is I want to talk a little bit about how do we deal with that. You see, the problem in many of our organizations is that we are siloed. And what this means is we have one group of people in the IT department or the OT department that may deal with operating systems, another group that deals with the network, another group that deals with our database systems, another group that deals with applications, etc. The larger we are, the more likely you are to see that kind of siloing. And then there's a group that deals with security. Well, here's the thing I always like to remind people that security is a quality requirement. That makes it a cross-cutting requirement. What do I mean by that? Cross-cutting means it cuts across all your silos. Security has to be considered everywhere. And availability is not a server admin function alone. It's not a network admin function alone. It's a server admin with security function. It's a network admin with security function. And by the way, for those of you that might not be in IT, by admin, I mean administrator. The point is, this is a cross-cutting concept, security, and availability then becomes a cross-cutting concept because guess what it is too? A quality metric. They go together. The security people have to be involved in this issue. If I'm going to bring a third-party tool into my Windows ecosystem, my Mac OS ecosystem, my Linux ecosystem, what have you, I need to make sure we've done the proper testing for availability issues. Now, we might have that testing be done by a server or network administrator or desktop administrator or what have you. But it needs to be that the security team is involved in that process because it is a security concern. Availability always is. And even if something is an unintentional security incident, that doesn't make it any less a security incident. And if we think this way, then guess what that's going to do? It's going to cause us to do better third-party risk management, analyzing these tools and asking, wait a minute, I've got something running at the kernel mode of my operating system. Remember God mode? I've got something running in that mode from a third party. Have I done risk analysis of that? Which a big part of that should be, is it updated in an automated basis without my intervention or without anybody in our IT group or our internal computer systems group doing analysis of the update before it's allowed? Because if it is, what happened last week is exactly what's likely to happen again and again and again. Because people make mistakes. We're only human. I don't blame the software developer, the deployment manager, whoever it was in CrowdStrike that let this go out as an individual. It's a system problem. And there weren't the right checks and balances in place, and it got out, and now we're dealing with the mess. Now, the lessons you can learn as just a business professional who needs to make sure that you're behaving in a secure manner is to remember that for your machine at work, when you install something on there, if you're able to, you're introducing new risks. And those risks can be problematic for your machine and for the entire organization. And I think these are all some important lessons we can learn from the CrowdStrike security incident.